I'm a right-wing hyper-political guy, and so I got to figure out how to put some like comedy sprinkles on that. So my hope is to like try to do the thing that comedians are doing and do it from my own perspective.
So you actually brought up a question that I wanted to ask, which was, so you're in this tradition of topical political, comedy, right? In an age of anxiety, and that's the need, that's the moment, that's the I guess in a sense an open door. But you said that you would like to do more Change Bank style comedy, sort of if you could. I've never seen Change Bank, but I'm familiar with the kind of comedy like this is just about laughing and having a good time. Like a good example is the movie Mrs. Doubtfire comes to mind.
Okay.
Like, yes, of course, you could use that movie to make all kinds of like hyper political points about all this stuff, but like really, like, can we just laugh our way through this film? It can be, it doesn't have to be this way, but then there's also this category of stuff that it's just fun and let's laugh for the sake of laughing.
Yeah. Well, I've been surprised. I mean, you look back at one of my kids' favorite movies is WALL-E, the Pixar movie, and you watch it now
Super
and you
political.
go like, that's it's like you watch it and you realize this is kind of right wing. Like this is kind of like you're like, but it only is because like every other version of it, every other way of thinking about it, like every other way of thinking about these issues is like totally gone now. And so like you couldn't say that, but but WALL-E itself is something that fit there because it was kind of reasserting normalcy at some level. It was just kind of like a portrayal of normalcy, and it actually like just this kind of like a guy who's supposed to be cleaning up things, and like the entire resolution of the movie is a guy like turning the ship off of autopilot and just being like, no, I'm the captain of this ship and I'm going to take it back down and we're going to retake Earth. It's like, oh dude, like, yeah, we ruined the planet and we like ran away from it and we're all fat and watching our screens. And now we're going to take it back and we're going to be human and we're going to walk around and not sit in our chairs. It's like, yeah, dude, let's WALL-E the right wing, propaganda, but like
right-wing robot.
Yeah. Right. WALL-E the right wing robot. But like what I love about that though, is it doesn't talk about anything. It's just reassertion of normalcy done by very talented people. So Andrew Stanton directed it. Ben Burt was the sound designer on it. It's extremely well done. It's Pixar. They're going to make it good. But like, I think sometimes when people back in the day would make what I would call right-wing art. It came out in 2007 or 2008, I think. Yeah. But like, I would call that a right-wing movie. But what they were doing was just speaking normally. It was the kind of dystopia that was just like, oh, I actually just love the planet, and it seems like we're being lazy, and it seems like we're like messing up our world, and so like maybe we should like stop being lazy and take it back and start like, again, reasserting humanity, reasserting a man and a woman, even though they're again male and female robots. But like it's again the kind of right wing art that's not overtly like talking about civil war or doing some kind of like particular, I don't know. It's something that could be done, and it's something that has been done, but like it's making its case, and it didn't feel at the time like somebody like made fascist art or whatever. Nobody like called WALL-E fascist or whatever. But it was, again, the reassertion of normalcy, I think is enough, especially if you're telling a story, and if you're making a joke that like can at some level feel just like a silly joke. At some level, there's something assumed there. So like if there's a healthy foundation of life and like what men and women are like or whatever, then you can make what feels like just a kind of anodyne observation turn into something very funny. Like again, the observational comics back in the day would. But yeah, like because we're afraid to go places, and also because we don't really even know. Again, we're so like torn up about what's possible to even joke about. Then yeah, like why would we joke in such a tough time? It's almost like learning in wartime. Like have you read that C.S. Lewis essay? Anyway, it's a great point about where he's talking to I believe undergrads during World War II, and it's just talking about it's great. but he's talking to them about like this. There's a war on, and the best thing for you to do is to be right here, and doing this because we have to have something, and we have to have like once the war's over, then we have to have something that we have to have a society that we're still building, and I mean. England was basically crushed after the war, but the fact that there were still people after that could continue to build lives was the result of people actually just trying to live life, trying to they're out there protecting something, and we have to have it in order to for that to be worth anything. At least that was his argument in the essay. But I think it's related to that. I think there's a sense that people like, why would we do anything so frivolous during wartime? I was like, well, we might as nothing. I've used this example constantly of Robin Hood, where it's like there's a certain amount of like fighting that he does, and it's not an anxious fighting. You admire him for his clarity of mind. He knows that Prince John is not the rightful king. He knows that King Richard is going to come back someday, but he also knows that in the meantime, I'm living out in the woods, and I've got my buddies with me, and we're going to keep like sticking it to Prince John. That's so he's not the kind of guy who is sitting around like whining about it. He's just like things are really bad. Robin Hood's going to have a great time, and he's the guy who with the like the spirit of it is much more fun. Even though things are really ugly, and that to know that that's possible, it requires just a wild amount of psychological health that I don't think many people have. And so like even having heroes like Robin Hood just shows us, hey, we can actually do stuff like music. We can sit down and learn how to play the guitar, or we can sit down and learn how to play the piano, even though that doesn't feel like, oh, it's there's this guy out here and he's on the news, or he's the guy who's in politics or whatever. And so he's doing the real fight. But there's something we have to be able to preserve something. We have to, like, there are people out there fighting. They're on the front lines of whatever culture war, political war. But what they want when their fighting is done is for there to be a society left, and that is worth preserving. So why destroy the thing that they're fighting for?
Mm-hmm. So you said a wild amount of psychological health, and you talk about a couple different things. A wild amount of psychological health that one has to possess during wartime. And I think the question that raises for me is, I think that there are people who haven't yet acknowledged like what time it is, right? You mentioned this in your Constitution video, like, no, it is wartime, right? And so in order to properly relate to the moment, you have to be able to perceive it as wartime, and then you have to go through that whole journey to have psychological health to be able to laugh again. But people won't even take that first step to recognize that we are a war. Like there's this resistance to acknowledging the uniqueness of the moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I think that there's a people know themselves at some level, and they go, well, if I believed that, then I would lose all hope. So with the Constitution is dead video, then I think a lot of people reacted negatively to that because they've always thought of the Constitution as their secret weapon. And so if the Constitution's dead, then I got nothing. And so I don't agree. I don't think that that's the I think there are plenty of things to love about America, and plenty of reasons to be patriotic, even if we don't live under that order anymore, that constitutional order anymore. But they've thought of that document again as the thing that they can use to fight back. But if they can face that, and if you know, hey, I can get through this on the other end, and it's going to be fine. And at least I'm going to be okay, and I'm going to try to figure out how to make sure my family's okay. Then that's where you got to go. So yeah, if you can't, we've got the Leadership and Emotional Sabotage book here, and I'm a big Edwin Friedman fan. But his concept of being well differentiated is not is all like if you're having to lead through a really messy situation, then it really will do you no good to not acknowledge the severity of the situation. But if once you've acknowledged it, then you can see it as something outside of yourself and something that you've got to I'll figure out what to do. No, I'll know what I can do and know what is out of my hands. But yeah, it doesn't do you any good. It actually is possible to see how bad things are and to also go, okay, it's my responsibility. I'm going to take the responsibility to make this better. But yeah, I think broadly Christians, are just afraid of realizing how bad things are. Especially, in kind of the more optimistic, more like people maybe with an optimistic eschatology, people have more of that kind of thing. They might not be okay with saying not be okay with acknowledging how bad things actually are now. But there's nothing contradictory between saying that things are really ugly here, things are really ugly and bad now, and I can still work, optimistic or not, I can still be faithful during this period. But yeah, I do think that people use optimistic eschatology as a way of like getting out of uncomfortable realizations and also getting out of some responsibility. So I think some people will like say, well, things are going to turn out fine, and God's going to save the world, people are going to be evangelized, and everything's going to be great. I'll just sit on my hands in the meantime, and I'll just trust. If I just sit here and trust in postmillennialism, then I'm going to be okay and everything's going to be fine. But I think that's a mistake tactically, and also just not a good reading of postmillennialism. Not a good reading. Right. It's not a good statement of that eschatology. Either way, it's no eschatology should give you permission to be unfaithful or permission to neglect something that matters, especially like neglect your duty.
And I'm glad you said that, because that was kind of my feeling about people who have a more pessimistic eschatology, is that somehow both of these eschatological positions can be flipped in on themselves to kind of say, well, Jesus is going to come back soon and going to make it all okay, so I can withdraw from the public square and retreat into my basement bunker, right? Yeah. Or also just kind of trusting that the Constitution will save me. At the same time, it's this weird contradiction.
Right. Constitution's going to draw me to heaven. Right, yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's like the Constitution with like a big S on its chest or something like that. It's going to fly in and bail us out. But yeah, there is also a way that the postmillennial position can be like, well, I mean, God's obviously going to make it all work out for America. Mm-hmm. Like, that's just how it is. Like, well, neither of those might be true. Like, we might actually have something to go through here, because that's the biblical pattern. Like, you read the Old Testament, you see like, the Jews went through it quite a few times, right? Because of their faithlessness.